I'm assuming Bob does too, but I don't. No, it's fine, but you know, so that you don't feel like you're picking something out there and get it. I don't have everything to bother you. Yeah. You're gonna see this Friday and you're gonna get it. I mean, yeah, you can go out every Friday.
Well, I like signing up for like food tickets or something. Like they'll send me a text and they'll be like, oh, it's like the day before they go like for super cheap. Like that's the only more down there. Super cheap.
Yeah, they're, I mean, you know, anxious to
Ready for
see.
showtime? All right, the time is 7 p.m., so we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Pelkey,
Here.
Trustee Delavan,
Here.
Trustee Dom,
Here.
Trustee Forsythe, here, Trustee Lanisa, here, Trustee Perkowski, Trustee Trejo.
Here. We have a roll call. We'll move on to presentation of the prepared agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Seeing none, that motion carries. We'll now move on to Village Board public comment. Anyone wishing to provide a comment on a topic or an agenda item may address the Village Board in person during the public comment and public hearing segments of the Village Board agenda. The comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. The board also adopted the Illinois Municipal League Civility Pledge, which states, in the interest of civility, I pledge to promote civility by listening, being respectful of others, acknowledging that we are all striving to support and improve our community, and understanding that we each may have different ideas for achieving that objective. With that said, Madam Clerk, do we have any comments submitted in advance by the public
I
tonight?
have two submitted in advance. The first one is from Frank Trocchio.
Yep, if you just approach the podium and make sure that the microphone's on.
I think it's on.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Pelkey, village trustees, and fellow citizens of the Roselle community. As stated, my name is Frank Trocchio. I live at 219 East Granville in Roselle. I'm here tonight to talk to you about the excessive noise from the train horns in Roselle and the negative impact on our residents, businesses, and community events. I'm speaking on behalf of the 3 condominium buildings in downtown Roselle: the Park Street Crossing, Gateway Commons, the Main Street condos on Prospect, along with the downtown business community along Main Street and Irving Park Roads. The increased train traffic through our town this past year has resulted in such an increase in the loud, unabated train noise from their horns that for our residents living next to or near the train tracks, it's become a detriment to their quality of life, prevents people from sitting on their balconies, relaxing, opening the windows in their own homes, and getting restful, uninterrupted sleep, watching TV uninterrupted, or even simply carrying on conversations. The business establishments that Roselle is fortunate to have nurtured, especially those with outdoor seating, they're negatively impacted by the incessant eardrum piercing noise of these train horns. Roselle attracts a lot of people from many areas to its Taste of Roselle, the Linfred Winery Bed and Breakfast, the Friday night car cruise nights, and the Rose Parade. In 2024, you created a beautiful area calling it the Pedal Plaza Porch and Promenade, which will host various performances and cultural events beginning this year. All of these events are going to be successful, but they'll definitely become more popular and enjoyable if you eliminate the train horn disturbances. We urge you as our elected representatives, on behalf of all our residents and business owners, to continue to work collectively with the state, federal agencies, and the railroad to establish Roselle's Main Street corridor as a quiet zone to minimize this noise. Hopefully, you'll have the same success that you were able to accomplish this at the Rodenberg crossing last year. Most of our neighboring towns have already established these quiet zones, so we know it can be done. Tonight, I have over 278 signatures in a petition that we designed. Everyone in favor of establishing this Roselle Main Street corridor as a quiet zone. We've got about 96% of all the condominium, single-family home residents, and mainstream businesses in support of this initiative. If you could please enter these petitions into record for tonight's board meeting. Amanda, I'll give these to you, okay? I would like to offer to be a part of any committee to assist in making this happen. I know it probably won't be easy, but all the different agencies, and I know you guys have been working on it. I appreciate that. But maybe these petitions will give you a little bit more impetus to get through these different bureaucracy, red tape that you have to deal with. I thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to working together as a community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to make a big assumption here. Could I get a show of hands of how many people in the room are here tonight regarding a quiet zone, just for the record? Thank you. And Frank, I don't think I could have put it better than you did, so thank you for those very well-made remarks and comments. I hope everyone, if you are available to, would stay for our presentation on our State of the Village, because we will be talking a little bit about the progress, though little, we have been able to make on it, which is an important step. A few things I just want to kind of highlight separate from that. The Rodenberg Road crossing was a part, and the Main Street area was a part of a 2015 study that the board conducted. And at that time, that board voted, except for one person who's on this board here, to only move forward with the Rodenberg Road crossing, and they excluded the Main Street area for a number of different reasons. Some were regarding safety, some felt it wasn't necessary, some felt it was too expensive. But regardless, that board at that time felt it was only important to do the Rodenberg Road. Now, a lot has changed since then, but one of the biggest things that has changed is federal law. At that time, when the board did that action, when they did secure that for Rodenberg Road, the Federal Railroad Association still had the regulatory authority to implement quiet zones in the Chicagoland area. Legislation was filed, and Senator Durbin actually carved out the Chicagoland area from FRA regulations in hopes of making sure that this would be an easier process going forward. Unfortunately, that carve-out empowered the Illinois Commerce Commission, or ICC, to have overview of this process, but the state assembly has given them no authority to hold anyone in a binding way to that standard. And so Roselle has been, unfortunately, due to, I think, good intentions by a prior board and just a changing federal landscape, has been left in kind of this quagmire of a situation where we fall in no man's land. Obviously, I want to be very clear about it. That's not an okay answer, and we've been working, we'll have an update during the presentation about where we're at right now. Two things I would say is it's a very personal thing for me as well. I'm very close to the train. I grew up next to the train. My house shakes every time, and believe me, my wife leans over to me every night and reminds me, I'm doing this for you. I don't want to live this close to the train, and I want to just point that out in some jest, but all seriousness, it's something that impacts my whole household as well. With that being said, us implementing a quiet zone will have some very serious implications for our community. A blessing and a curse is that merger is forcing that company to bear the brunt of those costs. So things that were difficult for us to consider before are now, we hope, will be mostly covered by the railroad company. So that is a good step in the right direction. However, there's concessions we are going to have to make in order to make this happen. Things that could include, to one extreme, closing the vehicular crossing at Prospect Street, for instance. Our downtown is very unique in the fact that our distance from the nearest intersection is not ideal. the distance between each crossing is not ideal. And so there's a lot of serious things, and I hope at some point this year we'll be able to have a forum with some more direct information to solicit the community's thoughts, because the board is not going to make any decisions without the public's thoughts on it. We're also doing a downtown comprehensive plan refresh, and a lot of that is also going to center around a quiet zone and how would that need to be supported if it were to be done. And so a lot more to come on that, but just some food for thought that I want everyone to start to think about, because it isn't as easy as just getting the approval. We'll have to probably make some concessions and changes to the way our downtown is configured in order to make it happen. I think that's a sacrifice worth making, but there are trade-offs that we all need to be aware of, so. Do we have other public comments in advance?
One more from Amy Johnson.
Again, if you don't mind just speaking clearly in the microphone for our viewers at home.
Hello, my name is Amy Johnson. I live at 116 Cherry, and I'm here to ask the board, I'm so excited about all the plans you're laying out tonight. I'm super excited about that. I'm really grateful for all the time and energy you've put into that. Something I'm really worried about is my Comcast bill. My internet only, is like $120 a month. My friend who lives in Elk Grove Village, literally on the other side of 390, pays $35 a month for the exact same service. I've investigated AT&T, I've investigated Verizon, investigated all the other options, and none are available in Roselle. To that end, when I go to Comcast and try and negotiate, they won't negotiate because they know that they have a monopoly on me in Roselle. So I don't know what possibilities, there would be for Roselle as a government agency to talk to some of these other, companies. I've called and asked, what do I need to do to be able to have access to these services in Roselle? And they can't really say much to me except go talk to your village. I would love to have an extra $1,000, a year to spend at the French Market. That would be great. So just something, again, I would be willing to participate in any sort of committee or exploratory, plan to try to figure something out. But I would love it if we would have more opportunities or, services here in Roselle.
So I think two important things to note. One is we're always a resource for kind of, I would say, utility advocacy. So, and what I mean by that is, and I'll direct you to kind of give your contact information to Brian Jonas, our Assistant Village Administrator. We can reach out to our utility companies and see what we can do to advocate to make sure that if there's reasonable access that they can provide to make sure that we're escalating that and raising that. Now, I say advocacy because we cannot force them as a company to do those things, but we're here to help advocate in that sense. One thing that is really a new exciting news, and I don't have any time frames on this, but we have been contacted by a company called Lumos Fiber. And so they're a player that's mostly in kind of the Ohio and eastern part of the country. They're actually making a large investment in our area of Illinois, and they have plans, or at least have submitted plans to actually bury their utilities in the village. And so I'm excited to see competition enter the market. I think that's the best way to kind of drive down prices and make sure that there's benefits out there. Now, there's only so much we can do to attract, and so this is one of the things where a company made their own decision, probably because it's very limited competition in the area. I won't say other words because I probably don't have the legal ability to say that, but I think that's an exciting thing that we're seeing a potentially new player if they go through with their investment into our community. So that's a longer play, so we're excited to see that, but that's something that's available to anyone. So if anyone ever has an issue with, ComEd or other utilities, we can advocate, but results kind of vary depending on the company and what they're willing to do. But thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Thank you.
With that being said, is there any other members of the public here tonight that wish to address the board? Yep, if you just state your name for the record at the podium and.
Hello, my name is Ryan Cofello. I live at 731 Circle Drive in Roselle. I've lived here almost my entire life, and I've owned multiple businesses in Roselle. I generally love this place that we all call home, and I'm happy to contribute to its success. I'm here to give a sincere thank you and compliment to the village administrator and to voice a concern of vulnerability for the village regarding a recent Freedom of Information Act request that I put in. In November of 2024, I submitted a FOIA request related to the disciplinary record of a former employee of the fire department. The village clerk provided me the documents in response to my public records request, and they were almost entirely redacted. I've brought a few copies that I'll share at the end of my time. The day after I received the redacted documents, I went to see Deputy Village Clerk Elizabeth Sheffer to discuss the documents. I expressed my concern to her that the FOIA regulations granted me the right to public records and that these documents should not be redacted. She indicated that she did not play a significant role in the fulfilling of the request. After a brief discussion, I thanked her for her time and I decided that I need to speak to the village attorney regarding the documents. In December, I came to a village board meeting and spoke to attempt to speak to the village attorney to request public records. I was greeted by the village administrator, and he asked me if there was anything in particular that he could help me with at the board meeting. I told him about my public records request, and he indicated that he was aware of my request. After some discussion on the request, he indicated that if I believe that the village was in error in redacting these documents, that my outlet was to contact the Attorney General of the state of Illinois to arbitrate the matter. He further mentioned that the village attorney was not at the meeting and that that evening he had a stand-in and that he typically does not talk to citizens directly. I did feel a little dismissed by the village administrator after that conversation, which led me to review the village's responsibilities under the Illinois Freedom of Information Act. After several thorough reviews of the act, I was convinced that the village was in the wrong to deny me these records. I took the village administrator's advice and I contacted the Attorney General of the state of Illinois regarding the matter. And this is where the story turns a little bit positive. The day after the board meeting, I received an email from the village attorney, Michael Costato Jr., inviting me to contact him via phone to discuss my FOIA request. At the end of the call, he told me to send him an email requesting the unredacted records and that he would send them. After a few more email exchanges, the village attorney sent me the original unredacted documents and the ones that I should have originally had. There was nothing controversial in these documents. They simply describe what I would describe as 2 acts of minor disciplinary issues to a public employee. I would like to thank and compliment both the village administrator and the village attorney on their service in this matter. Both individuals were nothing but polite and demonstrated a commitment to working for me. And while I appreciate their service, I would like to voice a concern to the village that the village may have, that you may be exposed to unnecessary liability as a result of a failure to understand how to legally fulfill FOIA requests. While I had the time and desire to see this effort through, another Roselle resident, maybe even one sitting in this room, may not have been able to dedicate the time and resources to obtaining information that they're entitled to under the FOIA rules. It may be prudent for the village to consider some training or maybe even a more thorough review of the rules for the village officials who handle these requests. I really thank you for your time. May I hand you a couple folders? So both folders are exactly the same. They have the redacted documents, the unredacted documents, and a letter from the Attorney General. Thank you.
So much. Are there any other members of the public here today that wish to address the board? Let the record show none. We'll move on to officials and staff reports. So happy 2025 to everyone. We had I hope you had a wonderful holiday season, and we're back to get to work here with a pretty robust agenda. So appreciate everyone being here. I have 2 items under consideration. One was to provide direction on increasing the number of Class J liquor licenses from 3 to 4 to accommodate Sunny's. They're in the process of acquiring the unit next to them in an expansion. And so this is something that I think would complement their business. They've spoken to us and they've had a great record in the village. So I want to get the direction from the village board on granting that license. So any objection from any members?
Nope.
No. All right, then staff will prepare that and put that on a future agenda then. I next would like to entertain a motion to adopt a resolution endorsing the legislative action program for the DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference 2025 legislative session.
Motion to approve.
Your second?
Second.
I'm proud to serve as Deputy Legislative Director as well as Vice President for the DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference, which proudly represents all the communities across DuPage County, which is over 1 million people. And so this year, what we're working with in this Springfield session, which got underway here, is kind of working on protecting municipal revenues and unfunded mandates. So many of you may be aware that the state is currently looking at a approximately estimated $3.3 billion deficit. And so we're very sensitive about the state continuing to reduce the revenue that they collect and are entitled to disperse to municipalities to make sure that we can keep costs low on residents to deliver important services. and also making sure that unfunded mandates are something that are not occurring because that creates additional pressure and instability in our budgeting process when those things come up. We also want to advocate for common sense changes to the Freedom of Information Act and Open Meetings Act. Specifically, there's been an increase in use of people for commercial purposes requesting body cam footage from police officers who are wearing those to protect all of our rights. But when people start to request those, which is time consuming, and then use them online to generate revenue, that's not the point of Freedom of Information. It's to provide, like was highlighted tonight, information to the public that's relevant and not to be making revenue off of the public itself. So there's changes that we're looking at from that side. We also want to continue to protect sustainable public pension systems. So there's been a lot of talk about changes to the Tier 2 pension system in Illinois, and that would be a massive impact to municipal governments across the state. There are concerns about some state pension funds and not meeting IRS Safe Harbor Act designations. However, those do not apply to municipal pensions, and so that is something that we want to make sure that Springfield does not add additional burden on top of us. As well as transportation infrastructure, there's been a huge push right now in Springfield called the Metropolitan Mobility Act to consolidate Metra, PACE, and CTA under one operation. This is to help prevent the so-called fiscal cliff that has been bridged by pandemic funding that was provided by the federal government. We want to make sure that our local voices are not overruled and drowned out by the city of Chicago, and that specifically the underfunded CTA pensions do not create a financial issue with the well-funded pension systems for PACE as well as Metra. So, any other discussion from the board on this item? Seeing none, can we have a roll call, please?
Trustee Trejo.
Aye.
Trustee Domke.
Aye.
Trustee Delapenna.
Aye.
Trustee Forsythe.
Aye.
Trustee Lanisa. Trustee Prokowski.
Aye.
That motion carries. And that's it for my report tonight. Any village trustees have a report tonight? Trustee Prokowski.
I just want to make an announcement that tickets are available for the Lake Park High School Educational Foundation's Top Golf Night. It's a fundraiser just to raise money for the school. It's on March 20th. The tickets are available. You can purchase them online on the website for the Lake Park Educational Foundation. So just wanted to make sure the word is out there.
Thank you. Any other trustees have a report tonight? See none, village clerk.
No report.
Village attorney. No report. Village administrator.
No report.
We'll continue on to unfinished business. First, we have the consent agenda. All items listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine, procedural, informational, self-explanatory, or non-controversial in nature, and will be enacted in one motion. There'll be no discussion of these items unless removed from the consent agenda. Are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda tonight? Records show none. Tonight we have presentation approval of the village board minutes of December 2nd, 2024. Adopt an Illinois Department of Transportation resolution for the improvements under the Illinois Highway Code authorizing expenditures totaling $1,140,000 of motor fuel tax funds in 2025 for the maintenance improvements of village streets and right-of-ways. Adopt a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute the Illinois Department of Transportation request for expenditure authorization of motor fuel tax funds expenditures in 2025, and adopt a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement for bidding, construction, and post-construction engineering services for the Bottom Wastewater Treatment Plant biological nutrient removal upgrades, clarifier, and headworks improvement project between the Village of Roselle and Trotter and Associates Incorporated in the amount of $728,300. Their motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
We have a roll call, please.
Trustee Trejo.
Aye.
Trustee Domke.
Aye.
Trustee Delapenna.
Aye.
Trustee Forsythe.
Aye.
Lanisa.
Aye.
Trustee Prokowski.
Aye.
That motion carries. We have nothing under and we'll learn more about tonight, the new development and engineering services agenda, administration, fire, police, or public works, but finance. Trustee Forsythe, you're not as lucky.
Thank you, Mayor Pulaski. I would like to move approval of the accounts payable list for December 10th, 2024 in the amount of $2,562,981.45.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call, please?
Trustee Forsythe.
Aye.
Trustee Trejo.
Aye.
Trustee Lanisa. Trustee Prokowski.
Aye.
Trustee Delapenna.
Aye.
Trustee Domke.
I'll abstain.
That motion carries.
Next, I would like to move approval of the accounts payable list for December 23rd, 2024 in the amount of $2,652,919.75.
Any discussion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call?
Trustee Forsythe.
Aye.
Trustee Trejo.
Aye.
Trustee Delapenna.
Aye.
Trustee Domke.
Aye.
Trustee Prokowski.
Aye.
Trustee Lanisa.
Aye.
That motion carries.
I would also like to move approval of the accounts payable list for January 13th, 2025 in the amount of $2,276,641.79.
Second. Any discussion? Finally caught up on the bills list. Can we have a roll call, please?
Trustee Forsythe.
Aye.
Trustee Trejo.
Aye.
Trustee Domke.
Aye.
Trustee Lanisa.
Aye.
Trustee Prokowski.
Aye.
Della Penna.
Aye.
That motion carries.
I would like to make a motion to consolidate agenda items 14E, 14F, 14G, and 14H, abating property taxes for the 2016A, 2018, 2020, 2022, general obligation bonds, alternate revenue sources, and 2024 taxable general obligation bonds.
Second. Any discussion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call, please?
Trustee Forsythe.
Aye.
Trejo.
Aye.
Della Penna.
Aye.
Trustee Domke.
Aye.
Trustee Lanisa. And Trustee Prokowski.
Aye.
That motion carries.
Due to the consolidation, we will be moving on to item 14I. I would like to make a motion for approval of the abatement ordinances requested as consolidated agenda items 14E, F, G, and H.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Trustee Forsythe.
Aye.
Trustee Trejo.
Aye.
Trustee Lanisa.
Aye.
Trustee Della Penna.
Aye.
Trustee Domke.
Aye.
Trustee Prokowski.
Aye.
That motion carries.
That was
That's all I
exciting.
have.
Certainly.
The crowd and,
That's a lot.
crowd at the edge of their chairs.
We're getting close to our presentation here. With it being the new year, we do have a number of new business items to give staff direction on. So the first item is to discuss a market licensing agreement with the I'm gonna butcher that, USA Incorporated, to operate a weekly French market in the town center. So we'll have our Assistant Village Administrator, Brian Jonas, presenting.
It's French, so I would butcher it too.
Thankfully, it's not legally binding at this point in time. so
Correct.
We're all good.
That's the purpose of tonight's meeting, while we kind of finalize the overall logistics surrounding the French markets. Kind of wanted to go over the tenets of a license agreement with the French market manager that has experience in Chicago, but also surrounding suburbs, and have been doing it for a long time. So the board is already aware. Back in October, we kind of talked about the special event lineup for this year, enhancements to the downtown, showcasing the improvements of the municipal campus. So for tonight, I just would like the board to opine on some of the staff recommendations of the tenets of the agreement, and also provide direction for some of the items. So we're still looking at the markets to begin right after Rose Fest in June. There'll be weekly Wednesday night markets from 4 to 8 p.m. There's some setup included with those timeframes. So logistically, would likely have the street closed down on Prospect between Main Street and Elm, likely beginning about an hour and a half before 4 p.m. And then would be tearing down the event likely after 8 p.m. The term of the agreement, we're looking to start out with an annual term with just an automatic renewal clause. Just because this is our first time doing these types of markets for the community, kind of want to just use it as an evaluation point and just make it simpler as well to renew the agreement if it is a success. The third tenet is an on-site manager. So typically what happens is the French market company hires a on-site manager to manage these markets directly. Typically, it's a vendor that participates, or it could be a resident. In our case, we're lucky enough to have a resident in the audience tonight that has kind of been interested and been communicating with me, has some experience, not just as a recent farmer, right? 2020, right? Ish. But also has experience with the French market company as well. So that may streamline the process and also just offer a little bit better of a local kind of on-site representative to help with the management of the markets themselves. For some of the logistics, Benson will offer us a trailer that we can house on-site at a location of our choosing. This is a little bit different than what we learned of before, where typically there's a pod that's kind of located within 200 feet of the event itself. Now we can have a mobilized trailer where we can actually move this with our own staff during regular time, help set up the event with the canopies that are located on it, and then the contractor would come back and help tear down and then restore that trailer on our property. So we kind of, that's a little bit better of a situation that we were in previously when we talked back in October. And then what I'm looking for a little bit of direction on is just a revenue standpoint. So the village will receive revenue from the taxes from the goods that are sold in the market, but some communities do offer a license agreement kind of fee to help cover some of the costs associated with the market. These range anywhere from $500 to $1,500, and no market is 100% the same in every community. But I do want the board to be offered with that type of option to consider, just based on the overall costs. And again, we're looking at kind of first-time upfront costs at around $10,000 for just the installation of anchors that are going to be needed on Prospect Street to hold the canopies together. But from a staff and labor perspective, we're looking at public works involvement to be done during regular hours, and then to start the market season, having a special assignment from the police department for one officer on site, and kind of use the monitorization of the markets themselves to see if the demand warrants that type of participation from the police department, which may incur some overtime costs. So that kind of concludes my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Any questions or direction from the board on this? Yep. Trustee Domke?
So I like the different towns here that you've said have this farmer's market, and they are all first-class operations that I know of. So you're using them for some of the insight that you need to know about this program, right? Like what they've learned and what they can advise us to do. So, so when you're using the other towns, and their fees are covering the additional work that we would have to do, and you said that's between $500 and $1,500. I would be interested in some kind of a fee that would help offset our cost. But, and to you, having this for 1 year is a sound idea. See how it works if people come out and you don't want to do something that doesn't work. So I'm in favor of this. Okay, I really am. I just want to know about this $10,000 anchors. That would be also something we could use for other events too, with people who might need to anchor something to the site, right?
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, to use, the canopies are going to be the property of the contractor.
Mhm.
So if we were to ask them for use of their property, we'd have to write that into the agreement and get the okay. That's something we can look into. But if it was the same style of canopy that locks into the same anchor, then yes, I mean, technically you could use it because it's our anchors on our property.
Are they drilled into concrete?
Yeah, they're cored into the
Are they
street.
covered with a cap or anything? So,
I don't think they're covered with a cap, no.
no.
But I've talked to Geneva.
Got like,
Yeah, I've talked to Geneva that's installed them as well. It looks like, I mean, for the staff liaison that I talked to, in over 10 years, they've had to replace a total of 2 anchors
Mhm.
so far. But that's something too I can bring back as more information.
Yeah, I remember the farmer's market we used to have with Amy
Mhm.
Reuter that was running it. It was very popular for a while, and it gave some life to the downtown area when it was sorely lacking. So this also would be a good thing for our little porch promenade. I'm in favor of it, so.
Other village questions or direction for staff?
I'm in favor of it as well. I like the idea of having somewhat of a license fee to cover some of our costs, but I'd keep it minimal, like the $500 level, just to keep it so
Okay.
it's not an impediment for
Mhm.
people that want to be a vendor.
I'm seeing head nodding, a lot of agreement on those notions. Trustee Prokowski and Trejo.
Yeah, just real quick. So for the license fee, is that going to be an annual fee or are we thinking?
It would be an annual typically, yep.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think having some sort of fee and keeping it as low as possible, I think is definitely in the best interest to kind of get the market going.
All right. So I think you have direction to kind of put together a licensing fee proposal. I would agree, and I think I wouldn't be afraid to dip below the 500%. I know that's not necessarily what was discussed amongst here, but I think, first year we want to make sure it works out well. But I think let's also get some clarity around our ability to use those anchors, or find out what the cost would be to lease back the tent structures if those are needed by another group or whatnot. But I think we've got direction to kind of shape it up. Trustee Trejo?
And just for clarity, I'm okay with going below the 500. So
Okay.
I just want to reiterate.
Mhm.
I think this will be, in addition to what you said, trustee Domke, I think this will be a great addition. What I love also is that this is kind of more like a night market from 4 to 8 p.m. So people who are working or may have other things going on, summer can be really busy for families. I think this makes this as inclusive as possible for people to come out and enjoy. So, and hopefully it's a little bit cooler then, especially in the summer. Not stuff we're worried about right now with the thing that's outside, but it will be relevant at some point. So thank you so much for the work put into this. Next, we have discussion regarding the West Walnut water recapture. So we'll have community development manager Karen Bricks presenting.
Hello. So we have a property owner in Roselle. They purchased 335 West Walnut, which has been a property kind of in that donut hole area that has been vacant for at least 20 years, probably a little bit more. He obtained a permit to build a new single-family home to move him and his family into that property. Walnut is currently only served by sanitary sewer. So he, as he's also a contractor, GC. So as using his expertise, he decided to extend the water, which was at the intersection of Walnut and Valley, down to the far end of his property, about 435 feet. This passes approximately 6 different properties that in the future could connect to water. One of those is connected to sewer currently. So he has requested a recapture agreement so that the other property owners can pay sort of quote unquote their fair share of the extension costs once they connect to the water line. In the past couple years, we've done 2 recaptures, so one on Crest Avenue and one on Sycamore. Both of those have been public recaptures, so we have 2 different kinds here in the village, one that's owned by the village. So as someone connects, they pay the village all of the recapture fees and tap-on fees, and we keep everything. And a private recapture would be, the recapture would continue to be owned by the person who extended the utility. So we would take in the recapture fee, keep a portion, I think it's usually like 5% as a processing fee, and then pay the rest on to the recapture owner. The more recent ones we've done have been public recaptures just because it's a little bit easier on staff. For private recaptures, if depending on when someone connects, whether that's tomorrow or 15 years from now, we would have to track down the person who owns the recapture, make sure we still have all their contact information, which we've sometimes had issues with recaptures from like the 70s and 80s. So from a staff perspective, the public recapture is easier to process, and there are sufficient funds in the water sewer extension fund to cover this recapture in particular. The property owner is currently updating his costs, so the numbers that are in my memo will change a little bit as he finalizes all the invoices. But pending your feedback, I can bring this forward at a future meeting to vote on.
So questions or direction from the board on this item? Trustee Trejo?
I'm in favor of the public recapture.
Great. Consensus from others? Got 2 head nods over
I'm
there.
in favor as well. I have one question. On the picture of all the lots that are subject to possibly being recaptured, there's one that's missing an A. Is there one that's not eligible?
No, so the A is properties that are currently eligible for annexation. 23 West, 684, our boundaries don't touch that property, so we can't annex them.
Thank you.
Has there been any contact with the other individuals that show any interest to getting the water?
Not yet. Typically, once a recapture is approved, I'll send out certified letters to everybody, letting them know. We give a grace period to tap on without any interest accruing. And then I will assist them in getting permits and things like that. So I do give everybody a chance once the recapture has been approved.
So I have 6 in favor of making this a public recapture, is that correct? So staff, you have that direction to prepare that. I will also say, this is a good reminder that it's probably worth us dusting off our annexation working group. So one of the prior trustees is no longer serving that was on that. So if there's a trustee that would be interested in joining Cheryl on that, just let me know and we'll get the meeting scheduled in the near future, once we get through some other things. So, but thank you. Any additional direction needed? Perfect, thank you. We'll keep moving on. Our next item is Rodenberg Road at Travis Parkway pedestrian activated warning beacons. We'll have our Director of Development and Engineering Services, Kristen Neal, presenting.
Thank you. So you have before you tonight
Crystal Neal, Director of Development and
so tonight I'm here to talk about pedestrian warning, pedestrian activated beacons on Rodenberg Road. So with the completion of the Rodenberg Road improvements, there's now a multi-use path that extends on the east side of Rodenberg Road from Central Avenue all the way up to Irving Park Road. And with that, we've seen an increase in pedestrian traffic, both pedestrians and cyclists. So adding to that, the additional residents that are at Timberleaf, we are seeing a significant increase in volume over what was there prior to the start of construction. These pedestrians frequently cross at Travis to access the park, the train station, as well as, just general paths in general. There is a bike path that continues down Travis Parkway, so that is also an attraction too. We've gotten complaints from residents about this struggle they have crossing Rodenberg Road, as well as there was one crash involving a pedestrian in the crosswalk. So the complaints that we've received have been about cars are speeding or cars are not stopping. They don't know that pedestrians are there trying to cross. With the project, Schaumburg installed a pedestrian activated warning beacon system at Rodenberg and the new south access road to the metro station. This allows pedestrians or cyclists to push a button to turn on a yellow flashing light to let people know that they're in their intersection trying to cross. It uses solar energy and does not require electricity to install. So while we don't typically install these type of systems, we've identified this as a location that would be recommended based on guidance from IDOT, traffic volumes, speed on the roadway, as well as the pedestrian and cyclist volumes that we noted, and the roadway width. It's a little wider because there's a turn lane through this area. The contractor for the Rodenberg Road project can install this system either this winter or early spring at the same bid price that they provided the Schaumburg signals. The cost would be $19,200 for materials and installation, and there's no engineering costs associated with that. So we're seeking direction on implementing these at this intersection.
Questions or direction from the board? Trustee Domke?
This type of thing, IDOT is in charge of this? Is it IDOT has to approve this? Like you wouldn't put it across an expressway. So IDOT looks at the amount of traffic and the danger to this?
So IDOT put out a memo that basically is guidance on if you've got this intersection with this kind of volume, both of pedestrians and vehicles and these speeds, these are the recommended treatments. So based on that memo, this is the recommended treatment for this intersection.
So my question, if I can continue, but this would maybe not be applicable across Roselle Road or Irving Park Road?
No, for a bigger road like that, you would typically go to RRFB, a rectangular rapid flashing beacon. That would be it's more prominent. It typically has brighter, more visible flashing lights. It's just an application for a bigger situation. So
Because there's a couple of places that have been tragic that could use that. But back to the subject one more time.
And I would also just add, both those roads that you cited, those examples, Irving Park is an IDOT control, which would require IDOT to approve that. And Roselle Road, depending on where you're at, is in DuPage County or Cook County control. So those are at least two roadway examples where we could not just do that without their approval on that measure. So versus Rodenberg Road is a completely village-owned and managed street where we can.
Yeah, and so just a couple more. So it has to be on a crosswalk and it has to be a marked crosswalk across the street, right?
correct.
Because people can't just go at any place and expect one of these. Okay, so then the other thing is, and I was just in overseas and you step on the street there, people stop. I wouldn't do that here in the United States or in Illinois and take a life into my own hands. But and this might be illegal, a legal question, when you put these on the street, are you then liable for someone who gets injured and they come back and can say, you gave me some security here and it's your fault?
Would council like to opine on that?
No. Once we comply with IDOT regulations, we've done everything that we're supposed to be doing. It's up to them at that point, the pedestrians and the cyclists, to follow those rules and regulations.
Mhm. I'm in favor of it. This is one that would be a good start, and there might be 3 or 4 others in the village that we can do later, so I'm in favor for it.
All right. Other thoughts or direction from the board?
I'm good with it.
Got 6 head nods at the end of the day, so I think you got direction to move forward with.
And I would say that we're also exploring the PR campaign for pedestrian safety to, not only let pedestrians, but also vehicles know what they should be doing at these crosswalks. So I've been working with PD and Emily on getting something pushed out for that. So
Thank you. I think this is a good example that we did an improvement that people are enjoying very quickly and using, which requires us to act quickly to pivot on. It's also a good reminder that we do have our ADA accessibility transition plan out there right now, and we're soliciting public feedback on areas or intersections where they are not ideal. So please make sure to do those. We have a consultant that's being paid through CMAP, which is the Chicago Metropolitan Agency of Planning. Thank you. And so we'll be releasing that hopefully for approval by the board later this year, but another opportunity for us to continue to highlight pedestrian accessibility issues across the village. So we'll move on to our next item, and Kristen, you get to stay up. So we've got our qualifications-based selection policy.
So
QBS for short.
QBS, yes.
We like acronyms, so.
Stick with QBS, it's easier to say. So when the village receives funding for a project through IDOT uses state or federal funds, we're required to procure professional services through a QBS process. The purchasing policy of the village does reference QBS is used when required, but the best practice is for the village to have a standalone policy. So staff drafted the policy that's before you today that complies with IDOT regulations and is based off of various municipalities surrounding us and ones that staff has used before. It does allow staff the greatest flexibility to evaluate and negotiate with consultants on this. The policy is required to outline the steps taken to evaluate and select the most qualified consultants prior to beginning negotiations so that you're focusing on the quality of the product versus the cost of the product. Upon approval of the policy, we'll implement it for the procurement of the Phase 2 final design for the Irving Park Road pedestrian bridge, which has been awarded federal funding for both design and construction.
So in short, if we don't approve this, we're not going to be eligible to get our grant money. That Reader's Digest version?
It's cleaner if we approve this.
I mean, there's value and merit to it, but I want to just put what's on the line front and center. So any questions or direction from the board?
Reason not to approve it.
All right, you got 6 in favor, so appreciate it. Thank you. All right, we'll move on. We've got another double hitter with our finance director, Tom Dahl. First, we're going to start off with our purchasing policy review and update. And thank you for hanging in there. This is how the sausage is made.
Thank you. Good evening. So talking about the purchasing policy, we and the new Department of Development and Engineering Services. So we wanted to update the purchasing policy, but the purchasing authority tables, which is Exhibit A of the purchasing policy. One was to remove the Community Development Director name and replace that with the Development and Engineering Services Director. And then also add the Assistant Finance Director, which we added the position in February, or well, we filled the position in February, and now wanted to make sure that the board approved purchasing card for that position. Otherwise, that's the only changes that I've noted for tonight.
Thank you so much. Is there any questions or direction from the board?
Not from me.
All right, you have unanimous approval to make those changes. Thank you so much. We'll move on to your last item, the financial policies review and update.
I just wanted to make a couple changes to the financial policies. One, obviously, we received home rule authority last year. There was some reference to being a non-home rule community in the debt policy. So I wanted to clean that up as we were preparing our budget. I noticed that we needed a few updates to this. So the first, I gave you the track changes for the document. Some of it was minor punctuation changes. I wanted to get those updated, but addition of home rule sales tax as a funding source in the capital improvement policy. We talk about debt and the utility taxes, but I wanted to make sure the home rule sales tax was in there as a capital source. An update to the debt policy, again, removing the reference to non-home rule and the legal debt limit language. The village is no longer subject to a debt limit. Update to the investment policy. Director of Finance and Finance Director were kind of peppered throughout the whole thing, so clean that up. And then due to a change to state law starting January 1st of 2025, we can now invest in corporate bonds that are up to 10 years. We don't go as a village past 5, but we now have that authority. It was 3 years, and it gives us a little bit of opportunity to get better yield by going to 5 years.
Any questions or direction from the board? Good. All right, consensus move forward. Thank you so much for preparing those. So that ends our new business. So that brings us to the State of the Village address. So thank you so much. This was a crash course in municipal government for many, but I think it's also important to know the work that does go into making a successful year ahead. So I think time well spent, at least in my book. So thank you for coming here in the room, or those of you who are watching at home or watching this later on. This is something that we started about 3 years ago. This is prior an address that was done with the Chamber of Commerce that required people to pay, and I think does a disservice to the community. We all deserve to have an idea of where your community is going and what we've accomplished, and I think it's super important because we know there's a lot of things out there that we still need to work on, but we've made a lot of headway in things, and it's important for us to pause and look back at the success that we've had. So if we move on to the next slide here, 2024 was a marquee year for the village. I think, our centennial year was a great way to showcase what we are and our aspirations for the future. And really each year we've continued to up that game in what we are. And so for the first time ever, we were named a best town to live in by the Daily Herald readers. And I think that's a substantial accomplishment because it's from local people. It's not weird criteria that's being evaluated by different businesses and people with an interest. It was voted on by the people that subscribe to the Daily Herald. I think that really speaks volumes to what we have done in our town and that we are a really attractive place to live. Having been born and raised and have deep roots to this community, I think the one thing that drives me nuts is we always settle. We always say that, we're Roselle, so we don't need the best. We're not Wheaton, we're not Elmhurst, but I think this shows that we do deserve the best because we are the best. We also were able to take this as an opportunity to highlight ourselves with WGN Radio. And so this was a great opportunity to continue to expand what people hear about Roselle. I know increasingly I get less the Rosemont when I say Roselle to people. And I think we want to continue to make sure that everyone knows what we have to offer here in our town. So if we were to continue on at a glance, not only were we named a best place, but we had 15 businesses in our town nominated and recognized as the best of the best in their category, whether it was a restaurant, a shop. And the one thing that's unique is all those were locally owned businesses. And I think that's the key thing in Roselle. There are tons of corporations and chains that you can get in any number of towns, but what keeps Roselle unique in my mind is our small business base because they are generous, they volunteer, they donate, and they create a really unique community fabric for us. We also started our work on a new sculpture honoring our first responders with the Roselle Arts and Culture Foundation. And we're excited to be able to unveil that this upcoming spring. And I think this is something that is a really unique take. There's a lot of veteran memorials honoring our military, but I think there's not as much attention paid to our police, our fire, and especially this time of year, our public works people who do a lot to help us when we have unexpected weather events. And so we have an opportunity to recognize those through donor bricks, but also we'll have a sculpture that honors them going forward in our town going forward. We also introduced new portals to make doing business with the village much more improved. So whether it's from permitting or whatnot, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, it's driving towards a better customer experience. And that's something that's going to be a theme as we go to 2025 and beyond. We also welcome some new vehicles to our fleet. We got a much-needed Public Works camera truck that helps us diagnose and find issues quicker, as well as some additional police drones that have been out and deployed at a number of our events to make sure that we keep our public safety. And I know that we have had some great success with those at events. We also were able to receive over $4.1 million in grants. And so some of these are things that we've highlighted throughout the year organically, but these are projects that span multiple years. And I think these are things that are going to be assets that are going to help us continue to develop as well as support things. There's obviously the big flashy things like the pedestrian bridge, but we've also done well getting smaller grants, which add up to big things, such as being able to make stormwater improvements to Rosemont Avenue, doing pedestrian improvements, as well as continuing to help us towards some street resurfacing, especially at Plum Grove Bridge Deck, which is a very expensive job coming up too. We also got additional funding for our municipal campus, which is, I would say, probably 90% there. And we have phase 2 beginning next year to kind of help finish that off all the way to Maple Avenue, as well as a number of opportunities to help continue to train our team members and make sure that we have the public safety that our community expects and demands. Now, I like to remind everyone the number one thing that we spend our money in our general revenue fund is for people. And so in some extent, we are an HR organization because if we don't have people, we have to have police officers, we need to have paramedics, we need to have drivers. If we don't have and employ those people, we can't deliver the services and the important things that the community expects. And so I think it's really important for us to take a pause to recognize that we're taking care of our employees, but also celebrating it. And I think what's great is we have high tenure in Roselle, which means people like working here. And I think one thing that's been a huge change is we've had a huge shift as people started to retire. And so we're a very young organization as well. And so we have a number of 5-year anniversaries to celebrate, as well as 10 and a 30 and a 35-year anniversary. So I think that just speaks to our culture and our area, but also the fact that we had 12 promotions within our area. We do a lot to cultivate talent because it's a lot easier to train people and watch them build and grow their career in our organization instead of trying to pluck talent from outside. And we've had some fantastic hires from outside the organization, so I don't want to belittle that. But our goal is ultimately to build the talent from within and help them grow to their aspirations. And so it's been a fantastic thing to see so many employees celebrate that. And with that, one thing that we started last year was to develop a refreshed kind of culture for what our department should be striving towards for our people. And so a lot of the private sector focuses on this, but I think it's equally important from a village perspective. And I want to thank our village administrator for leading this effort because I know it took a lot of time. And this had not been refreshed. At least the last copy I found of this was a memo from 1993 in a really old tattered frame on the walls. So it was much needed. But if you look at these pillars, they really mean something, and I think they reflect our community's values as well. Respect to others, taking pride in our work, growth and learning, ensuring quality service, and intentional collaboration. And I think these are core and foundational to making sure that all of our departments are delivering for our residents and making sure that we continue to push Roselle to the top. And so with that, exciting things that we were able to fulfill. And I think first we want to highlight that vehicle stickers have been eliminated for this year coming up. And so when we were doing this conversation last year, there's obviously a lot of storm clouds on the horizon. We had a lot of federally mandated infrastructure improvements we had to tackle, and we weren't sure how we were going to finance that. With the support of the community and the trust that they instilled in the village board, we were able to obtain home rule. And because of that, we were able to kind of fulfill our promises to the public. So if we go to the next slide, we can kind of look at the 3 different things that we made a promise and how we've met, or actually, I would argue, go above and beyond that. So the first one was we agreed to caps on our CIS rates. We said that we would not exceed $9, and we're $1 below that not to exceed limit. We also said we would continue to follow the property tax extension limitation law, or PTEL, and for the upcoming year, we kept the rate to the PTEL limit as well. And I think the important thing is we were exploring the possibility to eliminate vehicle stickers. And the reason we said exploring was not to bait and switch the public or to try to give ourselves a trapdoor, but when we were implementing these new policies, we had to make sure that we had the right revenue streams to guarantee the projects that need to be done. That's why we did this in the first place. We didn't want to handicap the village by cutting a major program that generated over $600,000 to help with street maintenance and repair. And so because of that, though, we were able to, and I'm very excited to say, eliminate vehicle stickers effective October 1st. So everyone needs to have a vehicle sticker right now. Those were due back in November or in October, but those will not be something that we'll be collecting and putting on our windshields going forward as we get to the fall time period. There's also important work that's been able to be done on our train crossings and quiet zones. And as I kind of mentioned earlier in the meeting, this has been a journey for the village that's almost been a decade in the making. And so our first quiet zone was approved back in 2016, and that was only for the Rodenberg Road crossing. And that was temporarily removed during the construction due to safety barricades being removed. But once construction was done, that was re-granted. And so we've been on a very long journey ping-ponging across federal agencies, state agencies, private companies, public providers to figure out an answer about why can't Roselle get approval for a quiet zone. And a lot of this comes down to the fact that this is something that's voluntary, that we have to, and how aptly is the train coming by right now. And so I think that it's important to note that right now we have to get all the parties, meaning Metra, the freight train companies, to voluntarily agree to this policy. And if you ask me, as much as I appreciate the services and what those groups do, I don't trust someone to voluntarily give us permission because they can voluntarily take that away. And so we've been working to figure out how do we have the security and knowledge that that can be something that we can provide our community. The big game changer is obviously the CPKC merger that was approved in 2023. The one concession we did get that I'm very proud of and happy is the federal government requires the CPKC to fund the establishment of a quiet zone for Roselle. So that is a requirement on them. Now, how much that is, devil's in the details. But it does require them to spend money to make sure that that can happen. But we're back to the same problem we've had. We need voluntary compliance from these two different agencies, the freight company and Metro, to make that happen. After a lot of needling and pushing, we were finally, and it took way longer than it needed to, but we were finally able to meet with all the officials in July of last year to discuss what are the next steps and what are the requirements for each agency to allow Roselle to have a quiet zone established. And I thought I was going to have nothing to share with you, but it's almost like Metro knew that we had some residents that were getting frustrated just as much as we were. And last week, I kid you not, January 9th, Metro finally, and I want to keep this in mind, every other agency gave us their comments within a month. For some reason, Metro needed a whole 6 extra months to get their comments to us. That spells out what they would require. And it is a lengthy list, and it has a lot of sacrifices I alluded to earlier. But this at least allows us to have visibility to it and really starts the negotiations. And so we have engaged with our state lawmakers. We've engaged with our federal lawmakers. I want to be very clear. We've left no stone unturned. And I think we're getting to the point where every ounce of political capital will be expended to make sure that this is done reasonably and appropriately for our community. And so we will have, I hope, if we get some additional information, we want to have a community forum on this topic because it requires a lot of time for us to dive in deep. And I think it's important for us all to have that conversation. But in the meantime, I think there's important things for us to consider when we discuss this. That first of all, train horns and regulations are intended to protect vehicle traffic and pedestrians, not reduce noise. And that's important because from our standpoint, it's definitely about the noise. For the businesses, it's about the noise. But from a regulation requirement, from an agency perspective, it's about safety, and we have to mitigate that with extra gates, closing streets, and putting up barriers in the street to make sure that vehicles and people don't put themselves in harm's way. And so that's an important thing when we discuss this from that side. The other thing is Metra actually owns and operates the rail line. So they are required to follow FRA regulations. And so some of the equipment that is required for that has excessively long lead times. Some things like pedestrian gates can take 36 months from when you order it to get it delivered and installed. And so this is something where even though we may get an agreement in the near term, it will take us a long time to get everything required purchased and installed. But I think I would sleep a little bit easier even if they wake me up knowing that relief is around the corner. And the other thing that's interesting is the FRA, not the ICC, has the official authority to prohibit sounding train horns. And that's an issue that we're trying to kind of work through on our end, and we can discuss this at length at another venue. But because of the issues and how legislation was filed and passed, we're in this weird limbo area where the agency that has legal authority no longer can declare that in our area, which puts Roselle at a disadvantage. And frankly, we're probably, we think, one of the first communities to try this out since this has been changed at the federal level, which has found a number of issues. The other thing I will note is our current quiet zone is a voluntary one, and it's only from during the overnight hours, but they are always allowed to sound their horn if they feel that there is a car or pedestrian near the tracks or in danger. And so I know they do it all the time. I hear it myself. We can give them feedback, but usually they are going to say they felt that there was a need to sound it, and there's not much we can do to contest it. But that is kind of our summary of where we are at and the progress we were somewhat able to obtain on the terms of quiet zone. Infrastructure has been a huge focus for the community, and so I think there's a lot of things that we can take some relief in what we were able to do. And one thing was the construction of Pedal Porch, Plaza, and Promenade. And so I know this was something that a lot of people felt to some extent it wasn't necessary, and it was something that was a nice to have but not a need to have. And I think there's two things I would call out. One is the area was in disrepair. And so I think we were very quick to forget that at the corner we had a recycled glass pit that essentially I've seen kids scrape their knees on, bust up their heads on, and it was not really inviting, and it was really a distraction. The other thing is we had a lot of tripping hazards and concrete that was poured back in the 90s when Village Hall was first constructed that needed to be replaced. And so we had about $400,000 in repairs just to make it what it was. And so when you're spending that kind of money, the board rightfully said, well, we should evaluate and see if there's an opportunity to make it better if we're going to spend almost $500,000 just to keep it as it is. The other thing is we are guided by our plans and our future comprehensive goals. And so back in 2016, which was a multi-year effort, the board approved a new comprehensive plan. And one of the big things that was feedback from the community was Roselle doesn't have a central gathering space for community events. That we have a lot of events downtown, but it's always in the street or in a place that doesn't feel welcoming and inviting. And residents told us all the way back in 2016 that we should make this space in front of Village Hall a public space. And so it's been really rewarding to see that idea come to fruition. The other nice thing was we were able to utilize grant funding that was available to help offset the majority of this cost. And so things like the American Rescue Act and other sources we were able to get from our Congressman, Raja Krishnamurthy, has been able to offset those costs greatly to make sure that we have really a gift for generations to come and allow us to do more programming. And so if we go to the next slide, we can see that phase one has been vastly completed. And so it's shade structures have been finally delivered. The last one's getting done. We have a few final touches that have to be completed, but we're welcoming you all back here in the spring, early summer to have a grand opening to it. But we're also going to have phase two kicking off late next year. So we're going to do this after the taste, because I think we'd all agree we'd like to have at least a season without construction in the space so we can actually enjoy it. And so after the taste, we will be resurfacing the parking lot, as well as continuing to make it pedestrians, sidewalk, and lighting improvements all the way down to in front of the fire station, just to provide that continuity and finish the upgrades that we started. We continue on to the next slide. I think it's important to remind ourselves of all the infrastructure that the village is responsible for. So we do 76 miles of storm sewers. We have 10 sanitary lift stations, 2 water treatment plants, 79 miles of streets, 101 miles of water main that were very much so under stress this weekend, and 3 water storage tanks that all require our attention and a plan to treat those. And so we go forward. Last year, we were able to resurface almost 2 miles of streets. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's extremely expensive to do that. We were also able to replace a couple thousand, just short of a mile of curb, and we replaced 7,900 feet of sidewalk. And so we've done a lot to continue to replace and maintain, and we need to continue to do that. So we have data that is done to make sure that we can put together our annual street improvement plan, which does a comprehensive review of all of our streets to make sure we prioritize those correctly. The other thing is we look at big projects and opportunities for us to leverage grants. And so Rodenberg Road was a massive project that wasn't just a resurfacing. We entirely reconstructed a street from its base layer all the way up to make sure that that was secure for generations to come. And 80% of that project was supported by the state and federal, which saved us a lot of money, which is important. We also introduced a number of new stormwater drainage structures, as well as a new path, which we discussed earlier is getting a lot of use. And so pedestrian warning beacons coming soon. We also last year did 36 water main breaks. And so I think this is two things. We're able to pivot quickly and make sure that we can keep your services as uninterrupted as possible, but we have an aging network out there. And so last weekend was a great example of that, where we had 3 water main breaks within a very small area that we were dealing with. As temperatures fluctuate, these are normal things that occur, but it does put stress on our services, and it's why we have to continue to invest and continue to pay, like through the CIS fee, to help us maintain these important infrastructure items. And so we continue to replace those with 3,500 feet of water main replaced last year. We had 35 water service connections done and 11 fire hydrants replaced. I know one thing that's out there in the news a lot because of the LA fires is, fire hydrant flushing and maintenance. And the village has a regular maintenance plan where we do flush those. You'll see signs up. We do those in quadrants, but we do make sure that our water system is used, is up to maintenance plan, so that way it is needed in an emergency. I think what's unique is obviously if you need every fire hydrant one time, that's not going to work in any community. It requires pressure, and it relies on the whole system being in equilibrium. So I hope we won't have a wildfire of that scale here, but we do maintain our system well to make sure that everyone is protected. We also rolled out a very aggressive water meter replacement program. And so what this has been focused on is more introducing smart technology to our residents. And so it's not that our water meters are broken, but that they're older technology. And so we've been able to release more of these meters to the public to allow them to have free hands-on consumption data using their Ion Water app. And this has been something that's been fantastic, so that way as we go on vacation or lifestyle is increasingly busy, it's easier to diagnose leaks and issues at home, but also to track your usage and see, is it when that one pesky kid comes back from college, suddenly your usage jumps up 20%. This helps you find that a lot quicker. So last year we did 670 water meter installations, which is incredible, and we have more planned in the future years. Trees are also an important thing, and for the first time, I want to say in a while, we've actually have a net positive tree impact on the community. So we all may have forgotten, but the emerald ash tree borer was a huge issue to our community in terms of damaging or killing a number of trees. And so we've been diligent in making sure we don't find ourselves in a similar situation again by reviewing trees for signs of damage, disease, or just poor health, to make sure that we are taking care of those assets and making sure that we can continue to have a healthy canopy in our town. And so last year we planted 190 trees and we removed 150 trees. We also treated 95 ash trees to continue to maintain their health. And this is something that we continue to evaluate and continue to take care of on an annual basis. We also responded to 333 online requests for branch storm cleanup from our big episode in July, which I know many of us remember. And so we continue to make sure that while we obviously try to remove these trees in advance of there being a storm, that's why we do it, to keep the public safe and diminish the possibility of both public and private property damage due to these trees potentially being damaged in a storm. We did launch our shared cost Parkway Tree program again in September, and those will be opening again in 2025 shortly. So if you're interested in doing that, make sure you sign up. But do note, the village does pay to replace trees. We have a schedule. And so the Parkway program is more a way to, if you would like a tree sooner, it allows you to do that. But we do replace our Parkway trees. Traditionally, we need to wait a number of years for the old root system to rot appropriately before we can plant another tree there to be healthy and successful. We also had some really great moments where we were awarded our Plant of the Year award for our treatment plant for Devlin, which is also, it's been in existence since the village has been in existence since 1921, which is a pretty incredible fact. In fact, the reason we're Roselle and not Bloomingdale is because we wanted our wastewater treated sooner than Bloomingdale was willing to pay for it. So we became our own community. So fun fact for you there. And we also had a number of promotions happening in our public works department listed here. And so a lot of great people that are dedicated every day. And I think public works are often behind the scenes a little bit more or whizzing by our house onto the next call. And so we really appreciate them, and congratulations to all the employees who had a career opportunity. Moving on to public safety. We had a number of opportunities for training. And so the village purchased the property at 510 North Roselle Road, and they did a live burn. And so these are invaluable experiences for our public safety officials, because you can do a lot of classroom training or playbooks, but to actually be in there allows you to have real hands-on experience. And especially with having a younger department, this gives them that confidence boost for when they actually maybe, God forbid, have to go on a call in our community. We also hosted a number of other departments for that training, and I think that's another thing that we're always working with our neighbors to make sure that we are helping each other out and making sure we're all safer and better. Trinity has been a fantastic asset for us in that regard while we've been waiting to kind of come together on our redevelopment plan. And so it wasn't just sitting idle like it looked. It was used for a lot of comprehensive training for both our police and fire. And so over 8,000 hours of training occurred at the Trinity Center. And I think that's an important investment in our staff, but also to make sure that we're able to protect our community in case of the unspeakable. And so over 549 people from our department as well as surrounding community departments participate in those training sessions. And that's something I think we should all be proud of, that we're able to be a center for that type of investment in our staff. We also did a lot of community education. And so we did 47 training sessions for schools and businesses, from active shooter drills to CPR and fire extinguisher training. So continuing to make sure that everyone can lead a safe life. So if you look at our police department, they had just shy of 6,000 training hours completed. Our volunteers in police, our VIPs, are a fantastic asset. You see them at our events. Thank them sometime because they're volunteering. They're not being paid. They're doing this out of the goodness of their heart. And so they did over 900 hours, which helps us reduce overtime in our department, which saves us money, but also really we appreciate that personal touch in our community, I think, a lot. Our social services continues to see a high referral rates. We had over 653 cases referred to our team to deal with. And our drone fleet, that's kind of a relatively newer addition to it, had over 60 flights that occurred with over 43 hours in the air. So a lot of great new programs that we've implemented that are getting good use. Now, important things that I know are important for a lot of people to understand is, what are we doing with overweight trucks, specifically truck traffic that we're worried about around Rodenberg Road with the trucking center opening up soon, as well as just in general with the I-390 tolls changing patterns and whatnot. And so we've continued to step up our ability to enforce that by investing in the equipment in our trucks to do the drills, but also to make sure that our staff is trained in order to do that as well. We also relaunched our Neighborhood Watch program for the first time since the recession. And so this is a great opportunity to have more community-based policing and involve our residents that we know are so invested in our community to help partner with our police to make our community a safer place. Engagement, we had National Night Out return. So this was an initiative that Trustee Trejo championed and we brought back at Kemmerling. It was a little bit rainy, so hopefully this year is better weather. We also did a number of things, from coffee with a cop, shop with a cop, and our open house. A lot of opportunities for the public to engage, especially in this climate. I think it's important to make sure people understand and meet the people in blue and build that relationship. We also had a number of promotions as well in the department, as well as the Lions Club recognizing their Officer of the Year. Moving on to fire, they had quite an eventful year. Record high volume call. I think this is our second back-to-back year of record high calls. 3,542 calls our police department went on. Similar training hours to our police, just shy of 6,000, and a number of volunteer hours as well from our EMA group. So again, we have a lot of volunteers in our public safety departments, just shy of 500 there. Obviously, a big, I don't know if I should call it a highlight or an incident that we had to deal with, was the plane crash that happened in September. I know that was something that got a lot of media attention, but also just reminds us that, while it may be fun to have a regional airport in our backyard, it does come at a risk sometimes. And so thankfully, no one was injured and our crew was able to respond quickly and appropriately. They also had an opportunity to show off their cooking skills on Fox News. So that was always an exciting thing to get to highlight our department in that way as well. A big thing that we'll be talking a lot about in 2 weeks is the retirement of Chief Bozick. So he'll be retiring as our fire chief after a number of years of service. We've got a number of fantastic people to come up, though, and so we'll be talking a little bit more about that later at this meeting. But our deputy chief will be stepping up to be fire chief, as well as one of our battalion chiefs, Matt Kopic, becoming our deputy chief as well. So we're very excited to see, again, our talent in-house continue to take on new challenges and fill those leadership opportunities, as well as the Lions 2023 Firefighter of the Year. So development was not shy of any activity this year, and there's a lot more coming in the pipeline. And so one thing that's important, you might start to hear this, is community development is now development and engineering services. And so it's not just rebranding, it's an important consolidation of different pieces that could have created delays or just inefficiencies in our system, as well as for residents and businesses alike. And so by combining community development, which is in charge of planning, economic development that was in the administration's office, as well as the engineering review that was in Public Works, we now create a one-stop shop. So whether you're a resident or a new business coming to town, you can get all your answers answered in one area. It also helps us be quicker and leaner with our review of plans to make sure that we can keep things moving appropriately. Also, big highlights that happen in our development, we launched Cloud Permit, which is a new way for building permits to be issued entirely online, as well as code enforcement concerns. This makes it just a little bit easier. We still do paper at the counter, so we're not taking that away. But for those who want to, especially a lot of businesses or contractors, they're used to that, and it stops them from having to come into Village Hall, which can delay a job. They can just do it on their laptop and move on with their day, which hopefully makes things quicker for you as residents, as well as for our businesses looking to expand. We also had a lot of hot debate after over a year of discussion on chickens. I was not unanimous, but we did allow chickens in the village up to 5. We have not had a lot of takers on this, so it has not been the beat down of our doors, but that is something that was a big topic for us in 2024, and there will be plenty of other big topics ahead in community development in the future. So, last year we also welcomed 49 new businesses, and so a lot of these are from a diverse range. So home-based businesses, things that are service-based like beauty shops, a number of contractors, auto repair, as well as different restaurants as well joining the village. So we continue to be an attractive place for people to open up. In fact, I tell people more often than not, it's not the lack of interest, it's the availability of space. Whether we have the right unit available for them or there's just sometimes space that's open, sometimes doesn't have the most accommodating property management that doesn't allow for someone to come in. And so overall, our occupancy rate in the village is 97%, which is fantastic. Especially around retail, we're at 97%, industrials at 98%, and offices at 89%. And offices, especially soft right now in the post-pandemic world, but still very well when we look at the general area. We also continue to provide TIF grants to our businesses to make sure that they can continue to stay in Roselle and expand. And we offer a number of different opportunities. So whether you're looking to upgrade your exterior, making interior improvements, or looking to start a small business, we have a number of different things that we can do. And so it's important to reach out to our new Development and Engineering Services Department to learn more if you or a family member or friend might be looking to. Now, when we look forward to areas that we're working on, we know that there's 3 things that we're really focused on. And one is vacant and underutilized properties on North Roselle Road, especially once you start to get closer to I-390 and you get up to our village northern boundary. There's not as many bright spots, and there's usually a few people that are the exception to kind of what's going on around them. And we want to continue to see that strength of our business corridor continue to extend all the way to the north. And so that is something that we will continue to do and focus on in the coming year. We do have a car wash that is applied for development in that area, and we're going to continue to evaluate other opportunities to annex unincorporated parcels in that area that could contribute to our community in a more vibrant way. We also know that we need to have a strong Lake Street corridor, and we can see what happens when a community has control over both sides of the street. And what challenges Roselle today is that the south border is unincorporated property for the vast majority of it within our area. And so continuing to explore the costs of extending water and sewer to those areas so that way we can incorporate potentially additional properties and help uplift the design standards and see new businesses come into a very, very busy commercial corridor that should and could be much more. We also see the maximization of Village Center as a priority going forward. With the library relocation on the table right now, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. There's a lot of interest in what we can do in our area. We're welcoming new events. There's a lot of foot traffic, a lot of people who live in the core of our town, and we want to continue to see it thrive. And we don't have a lot of vacancies today, and I think that speaks well, but we can have so much more, especially as we open up additional units on Irving Park Road hopefully this year. We're going to have a lot of people looking to spend their money in Roselle, and we want to give them a place to do it in. So with that, it's a good opportunity to talk about development updates and what's already been started or is in the works. And so Metro 19, I know is a very hot topic 5 some years ago. We're getting close to final inspection and for that to potentially be occupied. So the key things to note here is once it is completed, the village will actually own and operate the parking garage that was built. Some of those parking spots will be used for Metro commuters, which will provide some great, especially in this weather, covered parking options, as well as the apartment will be leasing back parking spaces from the village to pay for the maintenance and cost of it. This will also bring 290 units to the heart of our town. So those are people that will hopefully spend their money, dine, eat, and shop to enjoy Roselle, and we're looking forward to seeing that. The village board did already direct staff, and once it is occupied, we'll be doing a traffic study along Lawrence Road to make sure that our traffic patterns can accommodate this growth, because we do know this will create changes in the patterns and behaviors of people. An update on the I-390 Roselle Road parcel. This is land that the village has owned for a number of decades, adjacent to that off-ramp from 390. We did receive an application from Lexington Homes to build 41 townhomes and 8 buildings on that property. Now, this has just been submitted. We will have a number of extensive meetings with the community, especially the neighbors adjacent to that, and it would have to go through our Planning and Zoning Commission. But we now have plans that we can review, which means we can start to have those discussions and understanding what that proposal would be for the village. We also have Firewater Barbecue ready to redevelop the former Maple Avenue commuter lot on right across from McDonald's and behind Ace Hardware. And so this is going to provide us a new restaurant and retail space that we sorely need right now in our downtown area. This will allow for an additional 2 or 3 units of sales tax generating businesses, so they could be complementary eateries or other opportunities for residents to spend their money in town. This is going to go to planning and zoning, hopefully in the next few months, before it could go to the board to approve construction. Now, to talk about our budget next, a little bit sobering to move from the fun things to the budget, but we continue to invest in our strategic plan that we did as a board. And so we've always prioritized stability and our fiscal responsibility as a community. We want to make sure that we are conservative in what we plan to spend so that we do not overextend ourselves, and make sure that we are able to pivot should the market not do what we expect. We also feel that there's a need to continue to invest in the customer service experience. At the end of the day, you pay taxes. You either shop in our town, you live in the town, but you're giving us money to get and receive a service. And we want to make sure that that is something that is efficient and makes you leave generally happy. There's things that we can't approve, and there's a good reason for it, but we want you to feel that you've been heard and you got the answers you needed. And so the creation of the new Development and Engineering Services Department is one of those, as well as this budget allowed us to in-house our paramedic services. This has been an outside contract for a number of years, and so by bringing this in-house, we can have better integration into our current department, but it also allows us to have budget savings of over $100,000 a year, which is a win-win scenario. We also know that infrastructure is important, not only to make sure it maintains and works for you today, but to prevent a future issue that could cripple our community in terms of its ability to continue to sustain itself. And so we want to make sure that our infrastructure is updated and we have a plan to make sure that it works for not just today's standards, but what could become, whether it's growth or future economic development that generates traffic. We need to make sure that we're not going back and redoing the work that we do today. And so if we continue on, the revenue sources are really divided up into 2 distinct areas. There's a number of other areas, but these are the main 2 ones. We have the general fund and we have the capital project fund. The general fund is primarily made up of property tax, our share of the state sales tax, a portion of our 1.5 home rule sales tax, state income tax, which is distributed to us through the state, as well as the natural gas tax. And these take care of our operations, what keeps the lights on in day to day. So contractual services, our snow removal, controlled burns at properties, tree maintenance, training and safety equipment. These are just a few highlights, but it's kind of those evergreen things that make sure the village runs day in and day out. Our capital project fund is separate, so that way we do not starve ourselves in one area and create a problem in the other. And so the primary funding sources are a larger portion of the 1.5% home rule sales tax, a 2-cent per gallon gasoline tax that went into place this summer, actually, the capital improvement surcharge fee, and our utility tax on electric and telecom. Now, these go towards our annual improvement programs. So things like our streets programs, sidewalks, water mains, and our heavily mandated updates to the wastewater treatment plant. And so these are funding critical projects to make sure that it is a vibrant community that is safe and efficient. Now, property taxes are something that I know a lot of people are concerned about, and rightfully so. Now, property taxes actually only generate about 1/3 of the left side of the screen prior, our general operating fund. So it's not a large portion of our kind of funding from that side. And the majority of that is going towards pensions. So more than half of all the property taxes we collect goes to pay pensions required for our police, our firefighters, and our general employees in the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, or IMRF. One thing that's important to note, sometimes people like to throw out, well, politicians get these fat pensions as well. No one that's on this dais is receiving a public pension or will receive a public pension from the Village Roselle. Oh, sorry, if we go back one. The other thing is, the other second biggest area that this is going towards is our public safety, whether it's going to paying for police and fire, as well as our EMS services. And so the smallest part that it's going to is our general operations. So when we talk about property taxes, I think it's really important to look at all the different components of it, because we are about a 10% portion of your property tax bill, and most of it's going towards taking care of and paying for our public safety. And it doesn't pay for it all entirely. We have to find other sources to pay for it. So those are important things. So when we complain about our property taxes, I think it's important to look at what's driving that and where does that money go in each agency. And from our standpoint, it's mostly going to your public safety type field. So it's something to keep in mind. Now, and that was leading right into what I was going to say. So you can see here, and this varies across the Village of Roselle. The thing that's complicated is we have a lot of different taxing bodies that carve up Roselle. So besides the village, the library district is the second most contiguous to our community as a whole. We have many different park districts that people have service from, many different school districts. And so these numbers vary depending on where you're at, but generally these apply to most people. And so the majority of it goes to schools, and those are very valid things, but those take up a lot of your bill. When we get to the parks and the libraries, they make up a share that's smaller than the village's taxing. And others include things like the township, county, and other agencies out there. And so the thing to keep in mind is it's about your equalized assessed value of your property. It's not about the value of your property if you were to sell it today on the market. And so there's a number of exemptions out there, and it's important to work with the township assessor's office to understand if there's things that you can do to impact your property tax bill from that side. And I think the other thing is, since we increased them about 3.4%, if the value of the general land goes up 3%, you essentially had a 0% increase in your property taxes from a village perspective. So as value changes and our levy fluctuates, those two things kind of come in play. And so as we do increase it moderately, it's not something that's generally directionally changing your tax bill. Now, our general operating budget is $24 million for 2025. And so the majority of that revenue is coming from state shared sales tax. And so it's something that the state collects and disperses back to us. The other one is the property taxes like we discussed before, which is about a third. And then other costs that we get, fees that we get from services, as well as grants and other sources. The big thing is this is about we're forecasting a 2% increase in revenues over last year. And we're expecting a 4% increase in our expenditures over the prior year. And so we know that there's a lot of headwinds ahead. We're not sure what will happen with the economy. So we're trying to be very conservative in what we're expecting in the next year and hope, like we do in most years, that we beat our expectations in terms of on the revenues. And our staff continues to be very aggressive and good stewards to make sure that when we go out and bid and we are going through things that we're able to drive cost savings where possible. If we go to the next slide, we discussed home rule authority being a big change for the village in 2024. And so there's a number of policies that were implemented to make sure that we can pay for future projects across the town. And so the first one was we modified our food and beverage tax. So this was something that was in existence since 2011. It's nothing new, but prior there were certain things that were excluded from it, depending on how it was rung up or classified by a business. And so given home rule, we just wanted to level the playing field because it's not fair to one business or another if they're able to find ways to avoid it. And so we just made that change effective September 1st. That was more of a keeping things level from a village perspective. One thing that was new is in September, we implemented a 2 cent a gallon motor fuel tax. Now, this is in keeping with all of our surrounding communities around us. And in fact, some have a higher rate. And so this is something to continue to make sure that we have money for our street improvement program. As we know, we have continued maintenance expectations there, but also to make sure that we're collecting revenue, especially from people who are using our roads, but not living in the town to pay taxes towards it. The thing is, no matter where you buy gas, chances are you're paying a gasoline tax to a local community. And so this is more about leveling the playing field than anything else. And in fact, other communities I know are looking at raising their tax rate to as high as 5 or 6 cents in the suburbs. And so I think 2 cents is a very moderate way to make sure that we're receiving funding to maintain the roads that people use. The other thing that we did that was a change was we updated our natural gas tax. And so prior, this was a percent based on what was billed to you. And so one thing about that is we know gas prices fluctuate pretty wildly. In fact, NICOR just submitted to the utility board a request to increase their rate for the future. And so if we had kept our percent on the total bill, taxes would go up for residents. And I don't know if that's necessarily fair when the price is set by another firm as opposed to collecting it for what is being used. And so the village switched from a percent on your bill to a per therm rate, meaning you use more gas, you pay the rate for that. And it's not based on rate changes that are being done by NICOR or other things like that that can inflate our changes. So it creates a more predictable bill for people. The other thing that this did is by going by per therm, we were able to close a loophole that allowed out-of-state third-party providers not to pay this tax. And so this makes sure anyone in the village is paying a per therm rate as opposed to some people being subjected to it and others not. And that was effective October 1st. The other thing that's super important about this is for those who are paying it, on average, you will see a reduction in what you're actually paying in the tax. But the other thing is this revenue is what's replacing the vehicle sticker revenue for us going forward. So without that, we would not have been able to eliminate vehicle stickers going forward. The final thing that was implemented January 1st was a home rule sales tax of 1.5%. This is going to be primarily used to help pay for EPA loans that we are using to finance the wastewater treatment plant upgrades. Those are very subsidized loans that are at about a percent rate. So it makes sure that we're investing appropriately, but also knowing that we need to spend tens of millions of dollars up at once. This is just not a realistic thing that we could do in cash. Other parts of that, as we noted before, will go towards other improvements, such as continuing our streets program and other items that we need to invest in. So we look forward to what's coming up here. We know we have over $100 million worth of investment that we need to make in our infrastructure. The vast majority of that is almost $80 million in wastewater treatment. However, we have substantial investments we have to make in our streets. Just shy of 13 million in our streets, as well as 9 million in our water system. And there's many other things we need to tackle, such as reditching our culverts around town for stormwater management, as well as continuing to make progress on our lead service line replacement to meet deadlines that are upcoming. So looking ahead to 2025 and the exciting things we have the continual progress on our pedestrian bridge. So that is a rendering. We're going through the engineering phases, and we hope that we can bid this out late this year, early next year. Because of the way that we receive the funding, it's going to be state contracted and bidded out. So while we work through and we have a lot of input on it, it's something that the state, specifically IDOT, is kind of steering and moving that forward. So we're going to continue to see progress on that over Irving Park Road. We have a number of things that we're doing to evaluate Irving Park Road curb and gutter replacement. So IDOT notified us that they will be resurfacing the entire length of Irving Park Road through the Village of Roselle this upcoming summer. And so construction will be significant, but I think we can all agree Irving Park is well overdue for those improvements. So we will continue to work with them to make additional investments to bring those up to standards that we appreciate. We also have, as I mentioned earlier, the Lawrence Avenue traffic study when it makes sense. We don't want to do that study this year just because it's on the books, but not have the apartment fully occupied. So we're going to time that appropriately with the Metro 19 development. We also have the Plum Grove Road bridge deck resurfacing. So that is the bridge that goes over I-390. That is a massively expensive endeavor. It's essentially the cost of what we do on an annual basis to repave our streets just for a partial segment. We're talking about a couple feet. And so it's a very expensive thing, but it's something that needs to be done. And so because of our home rule status and the additional sales tax revenue that we will be able to generate, that's something that we'll be able to tackle without a detriment to our existing street program. Go on to the next slide. The library land swap deal is also something that's very exciting. With the referendum that was passed by the community, the village will be transferring the Trinity Center to the library at some point this year. So we plan to demolish the building before or around the summer this year. We have currently our artist in resident, as we lovingly call him, who's doing the first responder mural. He's currently building it there because it's that large. So once he is done, we'll go ahead and move forward with the demolition of the property. Demolition of the property was budgeted regardless of whether the referendum was going to pass or not to make it build ready. Once it happens, the village then has the property that is the parking lot for the library on Park Street. That will allow us to continue to shop around for development opportunities and see what we can do to get approval on future plans to see additional economic vitality in the community. Once the library completes the construction, they move into their new building there at Howard and Maple Avenue. The village then will take custody of the library building itself. And so as we'll talk about going forward in future meetings, we've kicked off a Village Center reimagining or a new comprehensive plan 2.0. This will engage with residents, business owners, as well as other public bodies to help us figure out what are those next big accomplishments or goals we want to see for the redevelopment, really expansion of our downtown area to continue to sustain the activity and vibrancy that we have today. So this will be very helpful, and there'll be lots of opportunities for you to have public input. One of the reasons why we had this at the end of the meeting is to make sure I didn't get the cart in front of the horse rather. So the board has just given us the direction to move forward on Wednesday French Market. So with our beautiful new plaza space outside, we have a number of programming opportunities to expand and bring people down. So every Wednesday in the summer, we'll have the French Market lots of rotating vendors, food, again, just to bring more people to our town and enjoy the outdoor space. Thursdays, we're very happy to partner with the Roselle Park District to expand concerts at the Pedal Plaza. And so we're going to add additional concerts and extend the series through August so that way we can enjoy that space. The other nice thing is we don't have to close the street, which saves us money and time that goes into that effort, as well as it protects parking spaces for our businesses. So every time we had a concert, that meant all those businesses on Main Street, whether it was 1913, 8,000 Miles, Little Ribbon, they didn't have any ability for their customers to park easily and come in. And so this makes sure that we can continue to have a lot of events without creating a detriment to our businesses as well. And to round things out, we are going to be an official sponsor of Cruise Nights, which has been wildly successful and popular in our town. So this summer, really every Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, you will have an activity to go to between Memorial Day and Labor Day, which I think is a really beautiful thing for residents and neighbors alike. And so all in all, we've had a fantastic year. There were our challenges, certainly, and there are things that we wish we could have done and maybe didn't come to fruition. But overall, I think we can all agree that we continue to see the community blossom and expand itself to new horizons. And I'm very excited for what comes forward to us. We have a lot of work ahead of us. We're not patting ourselves on the back and saying a job well done, we can rest. But I think we've put investments that are going to have long-term paybacks for us. And we're already looking to the future to see how we can challenge ourselves and push ourselves to continue to be a top-class community. So hold us accountable. Lots of opportunities to continue to be engaged. Home rule was not just a means to an end, but really unlocks future potential for our community to continue to be compared to the likes of the Wheatons, the Elmhursts, the Genevas of our area. And I really think we can be the gem of Northern DuPage County at the end of the day. So thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. And share this with your friends and neighbors. So. With that, we do have another opportunity for Village Board public comment. So does any member of the public wish to address the board at this time? Yes, if you don't mind, just come up to the podium and state your name for the record.
This is a point of information. Do the 5 chickens include a rooster?
They do not. Roosters are not permitted. So, and you have to be filed with the Illinois Agriculture Department, so that way, if, in case of outbreaks or stuff like that, we can contact trace. So, absolutely. Any other public comments? Seeing none, then I'd like the board to entertain a motion to convene executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel. Final action will be taken upon the closing of executive session back into the boardroom.
So moved.
Second. Could we have a roll call, please?
Aye.
Trustee Della Penna.
Aye.
Trustee Lanisa.
Aye.
Trustee Domke.
Aye.
Trustee Forsythe.
Aye.
Trustee Kirkowski.
Aye. That motion carries. We'll be back in a little bit if you want to stick around, but otherwise, thank you for joining us tonight. All right. All right, we're gonna reconvene our meeting here at 8:56. Coming out, I'd like to entertain a motion to appoint Tim Smeltzer as our fire chief effective January 27th.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, can we have a roll call, please?
Aye.
Lisa.
Aye.
Trustee Domke.
Aye.
Trustee Delapenna.
Aye.
Trustee Forsythe.
Aye.
Trustee Prokowski.
Aye.
That motion carries. With that, congratulations, Deputy Chief. We're excited to work with you in a expanded capacity. We'll have lots of time to celebrate and embarrass you in 2 weeks from now. So, but at least there's a lot of department to celebrate and embarrass then too. So you won't get all the heat. So pun intended. But we'll move on to adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Seeing none. Meeting's adjourned at 8:57.